Not every woman is safe to sleep with. And if you ignore that, you won't see the consequences until it starts affecting your life. This is not about how she looks. It's not about how attractive she is, how confident she sounds, or how easy the moment feels. All of that can pull you in quickly. But what matters is what comes after that decision. Because once you sleep with someone, it is no longer just a moment, it becomes a connection. And that connection can affect your time, your focus, your decisions, and your direction more than you think. A lot of men don't look at it this way. They think it's just something casual. They think it's just a short experience that doesn't carry weight. So, they move without thinking too much about who they are choosing. They focus on the opportunity, not the consequence. That's where the mistake happens, because not every woman comes into your life the same way. Some bring peace, some bring distractions, and some bring problems you didn't ask for. But you don't see that at the beginning. At the beginning, everything feels normal, it feels simple, it feels like just another situation. But over time, things begin to shift. Your attention starts moving, your focus starts changing, you start dealing with things that were not part of your plan. And that is how it begins, slowly, quietly, without you noticing until you are already deep in it. Now stepping back becomes harder. Now walking away feels complicated. Now your decisions are influenced by something that started as just a moment. This is why you have to be careful from the start, because who you choose to sleep with matters. It affects more than just that moment. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 types of women you should never sleep with, no matter how good the opportunity looks. Because once you understand this, you stop moving based on impulse and you start thinking about the impact. And that's what keeps you in control. Never sleep with a woman who is already committed. It doesn't matter how she explains it. It doesn't matter what she tells you about her situation. If she is married, engaged, or clearly involved with someone else, you are stepping into something that is already complicated. And that complication will not stay outside your life. At the beginning, it may feel simple. She tells you things are not working with her partner. She says, the relationship is over in everything but name. She makes it sound like you're not doing anything wrong because according to her, it's already finished. But if it was truly finished, she would not still be in it. That's the first thing you need to understand. When you choose to sleep with a woman who is already committed, you are not entering something clean. You are entering something with history, emotions, and unresolved issues. And those things don't disappear. They follow the situation. Another problem is that you don't control how it develops. There are other people involved, other emotions, and other consequences that you cannot predict. What feels like a private decision can quickly turn into something bigger. Now you are dealing with tension. Now you are dealing with complications. Now you are dealing with situations you never planned for. And it can affect your peace. It can affect your focus. It can affect your reputation, because situations like this rarely stay hidden forever. There's also something else to consider. If she is willing to cross that line with you, that behavior does not suddenly change later. It reflects a pattern, and that pattern can show up again in different ways. So even if you think you are gaining something in the moment, you are exposing yourself to instability. The rule is simple. Do not step into something that is already complicated, because once you do, you are not just dealing with her, you are dealing with everything attached to her, and that is not something you can control. Never sleep with a woman who is emotionally unstable. You will feel it early if you pay attention. Her moods change quickly. One moment everything is calm, the next moment there is tension. Small situations become big reactions. Things that should be simple turn into long emotional discussions. At first you might ignore it. You might think it's just personality. You might think it's something that will settle over time. Or you might believe you can handle it because everything else feels good in the moment. But once you sleep with her, the situation becomes deeper. Now it is not just interaction, it becomes attachment. And when there is instability, attachment creates more problems because now every emotional shift starts affecting you directly. If she is calm, everything feels fine. If she is upset, everything becomes heavy. If she is distant, you start questioning what changed. That constant shift drains your energy. You spend time trying to understand what is happening. You adjust your behavior to avoid reactions. You become careful about what you say, what you do, and how you respond. And slowly, you stop being yourself. That is the impact. Another problem is unpredictability. You don't know how she will react to situations. Something small can turn into something serious. Something normal can be taken the wrong way. That creates tension in situations that should be simple. Over time, that tension becomes stress. Now your focus is no longer on your own life. It shifts toward managing her reactions, avoiding conflicts, and trying to keep things stable. That is not a position you want to be in. You also need to understand this. Emotional instability does not fix itself because you are present. It requires self-awareness and control from her side. If that is not there, your presence will not change it. It will only pull you into it. So the rule is simple. If you see instability early, don't ignore it. Because once you cross that line and sleep with her, you make the situation deeper. And deeper situations are harder to step away from. Never sleep with a woman who treats everything like a transaction. You will notice it in how she talks and how she moves. Nothing feels natural. Everything has a condition behind it. Attention, time, and even basic interaction come with an expectation. At first, it may not be obvious. She might frame it in a subtle way. She might hint at what she wants, what she expects, or what she believes she deserves. It can come across as standards or preferences, but when you look closely, it is always tied to what you provide. That is the pattern. Everything becomes an exchange. You give something. She responds, you don't give. She pulls back. That is not connection. That is a system. Now, once you sleep with her, that system becomes stronger, because now she has something to use as leverage. The dynamic shifts from interaction to expectation. You are no longer just someone she is getting to know. You become someone she evaluates based on what you continue to provide, and that puts you in a position where you are always trying to maintain something. That is pressure. Another problem is that the focus is never on you as a person. It is always on what you bring. Your value becomes tied to what you can give, not who you are. And once that becomes the foundation, it is difficult to change. Because if you stop giving, the connection starts fading. That tells you everything you need to know. There is also no stability in that kind of situation, because someone who operates like that will always look for the best option. If someone else offers more, the attention can shift, not because of anything you did wrong, but because the system is based on gain. That is not something you can build on. So the rule is simple. If you notice everything revolves around benefit, step back. Do not make it deeper, because once you sleep with a woman like that, you move from interaction into obligation. And once obligation enters, control follows. And that is not a position you want to be in. Never sleep with a woman who lives on attention. You will recognize her by how she moves. She is always being noticed, always being seen, always surrounded by people who are watching, reacting, or engaging with her. Her focus is not on building something real. Her focus is on being seen. At first it might seem harmless. She's outgoing, she's confident, she knows how to carry herself. She gets attention easily, and you might even feel lucky to be around her. But look deeper. Because attention is not just something she receives. It is something she depends on, and that changes everything. When a woman depends on attention, she is never fully focused on one person. Her energy is spread out. She is always looking for the next reaction, the next validation, the next moment where she feels noticed. That means you will never be enough. Not because you lack something, but because the need itself cannot be satisfied. Now, once you sleep with her, the situation becomes more complicated, because now there is a connection, but that connection does not stop her behavior. She continues to seek attention the same way. She continues to engage with others the same way, and that creates tension. You start noticing things, you start questioning things, you start wondering where you stand. And instead of building something stable, you are dealing with uncertainty. Another problem is competition. Whether it is direct or indirect, you are not the only one in her space. There are always other people around her, always other sources of attention. That creates a situation where you are constantly compared. Even if it is not said out loud, that is not a position of control. That is a position of uncertainty. So the rule is simple. If attention is her priority, you will always be secondary. And once you sleep with her, you make the situation deeper without changing that reality. So don't ignore it, because what you see at the beginning is exactly what continues later. Never sleep with a woman who makes your life too comfortable too quickly. This one is subtle, and that's why most men miss it. She doesn't bring drama, she doesn't bring pressure. In fact, everything feels easy around her. She makes things smooth, she removes stress. She supports you in a way that feels almost perfect. At first, it feels like you found something rare. Someone who understands you. Someone who makes life easier. Someone who takes care of things without asking too many questions. But that's where the danger is. Because when everything becomes too easy, you start changing without realizing it. You stop pushing yourself the way you used to. You stop focusing as sharply as before. You stop handling things with the same level of discipline because now you don't have to. She steps in. She solves things. She reduces the pressure that used to drive you, and slowly your edge starts to fade. That is the trap. Not because she is doing something negative on the surface, but because the effect over time weakens you. Another problem is that comfort creates attachment. You get used to how things feel. You get used to the ease, the support, the convenience. And because it feels good, you don't question it. You stay even when you start noticing changes in yourself. Even when you realize you are not as focused as before. Even when your priorities start shifting, that's how you lose control without resistance. Now understand this clearly. Growth comes from effort. It comes from pressure. It comes from solving your own problems. When those things are removed, even in a positive way, you lose the process that keeps you strong. So the rule is simple. If something makes you too comfortable too fast, be careful, because once you sleep with her, that comfort becomes deeper. And once it becomes deeper, it becomes harder to step away from it. And that is how something that feels good in the moment can slowly hold you back in the long run. All of these situations follow the same pattern. They don't look dangerous at the beginning. That's why they work. You meet her, everything feels normal, maybe even exciting. Nothing seems out of place. In fact, most of the time it feels like a good opportunity. There is no clear sign telling you to stop, so you move forward. You don't question it. You don't pause to think about where it leads. And that is where the mistake begins. Because the problem is not what happens at the start. The problem is what develops after you cross that line. Once you sleep with her, the situation changes. Now there is a connection. Now there is emotional weight. Now there is attachment. And attachment makes everything more complicated. What you would normally walk away from becomes harder to leave. What you would normally ignore starts affecting you, and what looked simple at the beginning starts becoming something else entirely. That is the pattern. It always starts light, then it becomes deeper, then it becomes difficult. Another thing most men miss is that these patterns repeat. It's not about one person, it's about recognizing behavior. If you don't understand the pattern, you will keep walking into the same situation with different people, different face, same outcome. That's why awareness matters more than experience, because you can go through the same situation multiple times without learning anything if you don't recognize what's really happening. You also need to understand this. The moment you ignore early signs, you are already accepting the outcome, because early signs are not random. They are indicators. They show you what is coming. If you overlook them, you are choosing to deal with the result later, and by that time it's harder to control. So the rule is simple. Pay attention at the beginning, not when things become complicated. Because once things become deep, your options become limited. And that is where most men lose control. Smart men don't move on impulse. They observe first before anything becomes physical. They pay attention to behavior. They watch how she talks, how she reacts, how she handles situations, and what patterns show up over time. They don't rush into anything just because the opportunity is there. That pause is what protects them. Another thing they do is keep control of their decisions. They don't let attraction override judgment. Just because a woman is attractive or available doesn't mean she qualifies for access. They separate what they feel from what makes sense. That is discipline. They also understand timing. Not every connection needs to go to that level immediately. Smart men are comfortable taking their time. They don't feel pressured to move fast, and they don't allow the situation to push them into something they haven't thought through, because once you cross that line, things become deeper. So, they choose carefully before that happens. Another key thing is they stay focused on their own life. Their goals, their work, their priorities don't stop because someone shows interest. They don't shift their entire focus toward a situation that has not proven its value over time. That keeps them stable. They also set boundaries early. If something feels off, they don't ignore it. They don't try to explain it away. They take it for what it is and adjust accordingly. That might mean stepping back, slowing things down, or not moving forward at all. And they are comfortable with that because they understand that not every situation is worth it. Another important point is that they don't chase moments. They don't act just because something is available. They think about what it leads to. They think about the long-term effect, not just the short-term feeling. That changes everything. So the focus is simple. Observe first, think before acting, stay in control. Because when you move like that, you avoid situations that most men walk into without thinking. And that is what keeps your decisions clear and your direction intact. Most men don't see the problem until it's already affecting them. That's the issue. Nothing feels dangerous at the beginning. There's no clear signal telling you to stop. It feels normal, simple, and easy to move forward. So you don't question it. You go with the moment, and that's exactly how it starts. A small decision that doesn't seem serious. One situation that feels harmless. One choice that looks like it won't have any impact beyond that moment. But it doesn't stay there because once you sleep with her, the situation becomes different. Now there is attachment. Now there is emotional weight. Now there is something connecting you beyond just a casual interaction. And that is when things begin to shift. You start adjusting your behavior. You start thinking differently. You start making decisions based on that connection even when you don't realize it. And slowly your focus begins to change. What you used to prioritize becomes less important. What you used to ignore now starts affecting you. And what felt like a simple situation becomes something you are now involved in. That is the part most men ignore. They think they can walk away easily at any time, but once there is attachment, it is not that simple. Now there are emotions involved. Now there are expectations. Now there are situations you have to deal with. And leaving becomes harder than you expected. Another thing you need to understand is that these situations don't just affect the present. They can affect your direction, they can take your time, they can drain your energy, and they can slow down your progress without you noticing it immediately. That's why awareness has to come early, not after you're already deep in it. Because once you are deep, your options are limited. So the rule is simple. Don't wait until it becomes complicated before you start thinking. Think at the beginning because that is where you still have control. At the end of everything, this is what you need to understand. Not every opportunity is worth taking. Just because something is available doesn't mean it is right for you. Just because a situation feels good in the moment doesn't mean it will be good for your life in the long run. That is where most men make the mistake. They move based on the moment. They react to what is in front of them. They don't take time to think about what comes after. And because of that, they walk into situations that slowly take more from them than they expected. Now, understand this clearly. This is not about avoiding women. This is not about being distant or closed off. This is about being selective, because who you choose to sleep with matters. It affects your time, it affects your focus, it affects your direction, and it affects how you move forward in your life. If you ignore that, you will keep making decisions that feel right in the moment but cost you later. So the rule is simple. Think before you act, observe before you decide, and never let impulse make decisions for you because impulse is temporary, but the consequences can last much longer. Another important thing is discipline. You don't need to respond to every opportunity. You don't need to act just because something is there. The ability to hold back is what keeps you in control. Because once you lose control, everything else starts to shift. So stay focused, stay aware, stay in control of your decisions, because at the end of the day, your choices determine your direction, and your direction determines your outcome. Now drop your thoughts in the comments.